Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. We are waking up with watches. Everything you see here is for sale. Reach out to me. I am still Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com. And not only do we sell, well, we buy what we sell and we sell what we buy, which means we will buy your entire collection. One watch or every watch. We pay cash, we pay fast, no upper limit on value paid, and we walk you through the entire process. If you just have one you'd like to trade for another, we also do trades. To buy, trade, or sell, reach out to me. I am Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com. All right, let's jump straight in with a watch that came out in 2016, as you see it right here. 42.5 millimeters in stainless steel. This is the third generation Vacheron Constantin overseas chronograph. Now, the dial is a very difficult thing to describe. I'll try to get a little bit closer here. It has a mirror-like shine to it, but there's also a translucent lacquer over a black polished base, so it has the same kind of metallic and gloss hybrid aesthetic that you get on a Chronomètre Bleu from F. Pigeon, and I understand the process for making this dial is very similar to that one. So you've got a polished metal base, translucent blue on top, white gold logo, hour indices, and hands. Unlike the second generation Krono, we don't have the asymmetrical big eye minute register here. We have tri-registers all of the same size. Taking a quick look in profile, everything is a screw down, so this watch is 150 meters water resistant, which is outstanding for its product class, where anything between 50 and 120 tends to be the case. Now, the watch does have a snap-off, snap-on, quick-release bracelet system. Easier to do if you have more nails than I do. But there you go, just like that. And so the watch comes with two straps, one blue leather, one blue rubber, and then an extra deployant clasp to use with those straps. The bracelet has its own built-in double deployant, and a fun feature across the third generation overseas, a sleeved 1.5 millimeter micro adjustment hides on each side of the clasp. Every single link in the bracelet is removable, so you will get the right size, and you can see there are different sized links in there. See, there's an intermediate in case you're in between sizes. Twin trigger release, so it can't pop open accidentally. Press both triggers, it pops open, close it up, and then marvel at the finish. Look at those interior hollows of the Maltese cross motif down the center, how they've been polished in contrast beautifully with the satin of the tops and the rolled bevel and the polish of the sides. Now, one of the key changes from the first two generation of overseas was that generation 3 uses display casebacks, manufacture movements, and movements that have the hallmark of Geneva, the Poisson de Genève, the Geneva seal. You could see that they cap their column wheel with a black polished Maltese cross. Then you have the Geneva seal on the movement, but also on the case, because it is now a full watch standard. And with a soft iron ring around the movement, you get 25,000 ampere per meter anti-magnetic resistance. The movement is large and properly fills the case back. We have 4 different finishes on this 22-carat rose gold rotor. Geneva seal finish means stripes, bevels, black polish, satination, chiseling, and media blasting, and all of this with a 52-hour power reserve, vertical clutch, and column wheel. You can see how easy it is to just pop the bracelet right back on. We'll do a quick loom shot here, and then I'll give you a wrist shot. Bright blue loom, blue by day, blue by night. And the watch is large at 42.5, but it's not ungainly, and you do have a lot of sizing options built into that bracelet. I'd recommend this watch for a wrist of 15 centimeters circumference or larger. It's a much more refined product than something like a Royal Oak chronograph, and much more versatile than something like a Royal Oak offshore, even as it surpasses the water resistance and magnetic resistance of the ostensibly rough and tough offshore. Now, jumping to a very different kind of blue dial, this is a 2023 release from H. Moser & C. of Schaffhausen, Switzerland. We have the Pioneer Tourbillon 40 millimeters, part of the Pioneer 40 millimeter collection. This watch has a fumé or smoked gradient dial in their new Arctic blue color, which is a super bright, electrifying blue. The watch, 120 meters water resistant, just over 12 millimeters thick, 40 in diameter, in stainless steel. You're not paying for precious metal here. And you can see Moser, ever discreet, confident in its dial, but also subtle in its branding. You can see the clear lacquered Moser logo on the dial. Now let's do a loom shot, and then we'll take a look at the Tourbillon. Plenty of loom. Again, a very swimmable watch. It even comes with a factory rubber strap. Now, the Tourbillon is a 1-minute flying tourbillon, so there's no upper bridge to block your view, and it acts as the seconds hand for the watch. But you can see two horizontally opposed flat hairsprings, being equal and opposite in orientation, geometry, and mass. In any position, gravity will cause one to run fast and the other by an equal and opposite margin to run slowly. So they cancel each other out, even more effective than an overcoil and achieving the original purpose of a tourbillon, which was to even out the effects of gravity on a pocket watch. This brings the practicality of that original invention into the wristwatch era on a wristwatch. This is a chronometrically intended tourbillon, not merely eye candy. Taking a quick look, you can see that the tourbillon structure is the best finished piece of the movement. It is free sprung for durability as well as precise adjustment. The tourbillon cage satinated and micro beveled with black polish on the studs and stud holders. Turn it all over, solid rose gold rotor with 3 finishes, pawl-based bidirectional magic lever style winding system, ceramic bearings for efficiency, 21,600 vibrations per hour, 3 days of power reserve, and then you can see the evacuations, the hollows, and the perforations on the strap. This is a very easy watch to wear, even on a small wrist. When the Pioneer first came out in 2015, it was a great evolution of Moser's modern design language, stepping into the sports watch realm, but at 42.8 millimeters, it was just too big for some. This, at 40, is perfect for me, and quite likely for many others, including ladies, who will find this is a very appealing fit. And yes, with a domed bezel and a low profile, it will fit underneath the cuff. I always like to offer some value options on these shows. It's true my company's interest is mostly in high horology and 5-figure watches, but at the same time, this is the kind of watch that got me into the hobby. Seamasters, Speedmasters, and Superoceans from brands that still price some watches for the common man who has an aspiration and a willingness to prioritize his finances a bit. This is the Breitling Superocean 2. 44 millimeters in diameter in steel, water resistant down to 1,000 meters, helium escape valve, captive bezel, robustly assembled and fixed to the case using screws, a system favored by Breitling and Zinn for toughness. A nice, precise, sharply knurled 120 click dive bezel. And then you can see the dial is all anti-reflective with AR coating under the crystal, a matte black dial, and then muted hands, numerals, and indices. We'll do a lume shot. As you can see, no shortage there. And the bezel pearl is a little bit above average in size for a diver, so it makes it easy to reference against the minutes hand. We'll take a quick look at the clasp. You can see removable links here are fixed in place using screws. You have 4 sets of divots, so with your strap tool, you can move the bracelet in and out to change the size, and with your jeweler's screwdrivers, you can change the size by adding or removing links. Single fold deployment, we have a clamshell lock right here, and then we'll roll around. Take a look, pointed crown guards, a little bit of a vintage nod there, and on the reverse side, you can see this is a Superocean. The line originally launched with the first Breitling dive watch of 1957, and this watch has a chronometer certified caliber 17, which is a 28242, automatic winding, 38-hour power reserve, 4 hertz beat rate, 25 joules, quick set date, stop seconds, 5-position adjustment, and yes, a COSC certified Swiss chronometer. Now, it's a big watch. At 44 millimeters, lug to lug, this watch is 52.5, but you can see the curvature of the lugs right there, so it wraps around my wrist. While I'm borderline for this watch, I would wear it quite comfortably, and you can see the definitive shot is that down the barrel, where you can see the lugs are not quite over the edge of my wrist. Now, if that's just a bit too big or too modern for you, Breitling has other options. Under Georges Kern, the company has been re-releasing fairly faithful tributes to its historic references. In 2020, we got this, a 1953 edition, Breitling Avi. This is the reference 765 re-edition, a tribute to a 1953 model that proves Breitling has more pilot's watches, both currently and historically, than just the Navitimer. This is more of a classical pilot's chronograph. The detent on the bidirectional timing bezel is the best I've ever encountered on a bidirectional bezel, which tend to be rather indistinct compared to the unidirectional type. While this isn't a diving bezel, it is a timing bezel, and you can line up the minutes or the hours. You can see it is calibrated in terms of hours, but you can use it either way, assuming you just remember where the minutes correspond. And then we've got a dial with sort of faux tina, which nicely matches the contrasting stitch of the calf strap, which is classic aviators, plexiglass, or I should say Hesselite thermoplastic crystal here, just like the 1953 original, no date, manual wind. It's a B09, which is Breitling's manual wind conversion of its in-house B01. So manual wind, 70-hour power reserve, vertical clutch for smooth engagement, column wheel for crisp feel. And by the way, Breitling's B01 family column wheel is one of the best feeling and sounding in the business. 4 hertz, 47 joules. Pull the crown out, you do have a stop seconds function. 5 position adjusted and a COSC chronometer. Throw it on the wrist. The watch is 41.1 millimeters and it wears quite nicely. Well under 50 millimeters from lug to lug. This is going to be a better match for a smaller wrist or those who have a taste for more classical proportions, design elements, maybe even a little bit of ecru luminescence on a matte black dial. This is a great watch that takes you back without any of the compromises in provenance or condition or originality that you find in the actual vintage space. And again, a rare manual conversion of the B01. Speaking of rarity, they don't come much less common than an Alain Silberstein Chrono Bauhaus with factory bracelet and a black dial. Now, Alain Silberstein, French architect turned watch designer, created his brand in 1986. He couldn't get a booth at Basel, so he attended his first in 1987. And from 86 to 2012, he made watches under his own name. Since then, everyone from Louis Hérat to MB&F to Vacheron and many, many more have collaborated with Alain Silberstein, as his designer value right now is higher than it's ever been. Go over to Watchbox Studios and watch my interview with him. Open secret, he's relaunching his brand, and he's got service plans for these older watches. If you contact him, he actually has a person who does service on these watches. So don't worry about the fact that it's a defunct brand. Silberstein is coming back, and he already has a plan in place to take ownership of what he made during the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. 40 millimeters in diameter in steel. This is a 99-piece limited edition. Silberstein drew on Bauhaus, though if we're honest, there's a bit of de style here with fundamental colors and shapes, as well as silliness from Dada. So Dada, de style, and also Bauhaus. That is what contributes to his vision of the ideal watch. Now, getting close to the dial, you can see there's actually an AM/PM indicator at the top that's not a moon phase. That lets you know whether you're looking, for example, at 1 p.m. or 1 a.m. And you can see right there that the little red index is just past the midpoint of the day, 12. So this is going to be 1 p.m. right there. Day and date, double quick set, Lemania 5100. And by the way, look at the attention to detail here. There's a little notch in one corner of the triangle crown, so you can dig your nail in if you want to withdraw it. Very smart. By the way, another pioneering element here, solid block loom on the dial rather than just a printed feature. Using a solid block of polymer-based loom gives the watch a three-dimensional loom. And while early examples of the Chrono Bauhaus did use tritium, this is a early 2000s model that features a full luminova dial, so the glowing features are still operative. It also has the super rare factory bracelet, and you can see it is very much a factory bracelet designed in the fashion of the case back with the Silberstein logo and the punch out. Taking a quick look here, this watch is 100 meters water resistant, and while it's not a diver, Silberstein did see fit to include a dive extension in his clasps. The vast majority of these were ordered with the strap, so this is exceptional. Now, taking a look at the case back, we may as well pop this all open again. We have a modified Lemania 5100. Now, it's a very high-grade version of the 5100. You can tell by the splayed spoke balance. And it's been decorated with some of the plastic elements that are germane to the 5100s here in those primary colors, plus punched-out sections, much like the architecture of a vintage racing car. The Lemania 5100 is known for being very tough, very durable, very serviceable, surprisingly accurate, and also surprisingly refined, as unlike most Lemania workhorse chronograph movements of the 70s, the 5100 actually has, let me see if I can fire this up, but the 5100 actually has, I gotta wind it a little bit more. Well, I've spoiled the surprise. It actually has a vertical clutch. So despite being a cam chronograph, it has the super refined smooth activation that you get with something like a Rolex Daytona 4130. or an Omega 9900. You get that perfectly seamless engagement. And there are no other Volkschrono or popularly priced mass production chronographs that combine a cam and a vertical clutch and integrated construction. For the most part, the vertical clutch cam chronographs are modular, like the 2894 or a SW300 with a DD module on top. So this is a really cool and really rare watch from a pioneering modern independent. Let's see if you guys can guess. I'm thinking from the hands and the numerals, you probably already know that this is a Franck Muller, but did you know it is a genuinely complicated Franck Muller, named after my homeland? This is the Franck Muller Long Island Imperial Tourbillon. The Long Island collection launched in 2000, and the FM 2001 Tourbillon caliber launched in 2001. Now this watch, as you can see, is a monoblock white gold case, so it's one-piece bezel and mid-case for a seamless look, shaped and cambered sapphire on both sides, not easy to make, expensive to create, and also to fit and achieve water resistance. Note that it uses gray gold, not cheap white gold that's rhodium plated. This is white all the way through. The dial, featuring sort of Art Nouveau numerals, because let's face it, Art Deco didn't really gain steam until the 30s, and it wasn't even introduced as a concept until 1925. So the look of the Jazz Age, the flappers, the speakeasies, the Great Gatsby scene was very much late Art Nouveau. And taking a look at the Tourbillon, you can see not only does it feature the Franck Muller logo, but it also features engraving. It is freehand engraved and a flying tourbillon with no upper bridge to block your view. It is a nice slow-beating tourbillon that is fully engraved. And by the way, look at the mirrored bevels on the edge of the bridges, as well as in the jewel sinks. And then look at the engraving, freehand with a florizan motif, so a sort of floral motif to match the Art Nouveau sensibility, sometimes also known as banknote scrolling. And you'll appreciate that even the barrel underneath has been freehand engraved. It's got a 60-hour power reserve, 21 joules, it's 6-position adjusted. I find it ironic that the most basic Franck Muller watches with 3 hands and a soap rod movement say Master of Complications on the back. And here we have a flying tourbillon, and it doesn't say anything about Mastery of Complications. A little bit ironic. It's 32.5 millimeters across the case, it's 54.6 from end to end, and it's just over 11 thick, so it's a broad watch, but I can wear it easily, and if your wrist is my size or larger, you too can be a Long Islander, like me. The Franck Muller Long Island. And, you know, for those of you who may not be familiar with Great Gatsby, it's set on Long Island, or principally in Long Island. And Long Island was the play place for folks in New York City and New Jersey who would go out and enjoy the North Shore, the South Shore, and the party scene during what we called the Roaring Twenties in America. All right, from de Bethune, we have the company's first modern format sports watch. Now, the DB20s were sports watches back in the mid to late 2000s, but it was 2015 when de Bethune launched this, the no-holds-barred DB28 GS, the Grand Sport. Now, it's 44 millimeters in diameter and grade 5 titanium, so very light. It's only 11.4 millimeters thick. Remember, a Rolex Daytona is about 12.2, so it's a lot thinner than you think. But what really sets this one apart is that this might be the only DB28 I've ever encountered on the short lugs. The company has lots of big lugs. The big ones are probably the most popular. More recently, they've started shipping watches with the in-between medium-sized lugs, but this lug set goes from 50.7 millimeters when fully extended to 47.1, so it makes this relatively thin and light watch suddenly compatible with smaller wrists like mine. You can wear this watch on a wrist as small as 14 centimeters circumference because you have that pliant, flexible, variable geometry lug architecture, and it's a lot thinner than you think. Taking a look, it's feather light. From over the top, the lugs are not over the edge of my wrist, and you can see that's also true from down the barrel. The strap is rubber, and as you can see, made by Jean Rousseau of Paris. They are the OEM supplier to de Bethune, also to F. Pigeon, so this is the good stuff. Textile and rubber, or I should say a combination of black textile and black rubber. No alligators or calves were harmed here. We have lugs designed to match the buckle and buckles designed to match the lugs. That's a common theme across de Bethune watches. So you have this open, airy, evacuated, prismatic satin finished buckle, and then the same treatment on the lugs with these little ogival bullet tips, the last styling vestige remaining from the original product of de Bethune, the 2002 DB1. On the dial side, microlight engraving, twin barrels. See that little blue index? That's your power reserve reserve indicator, 6 days of power reserve, and you cannot accidentally overwind it. Take a look from the side and you can see the dial depth is superb. Black polished full balance bridge for bracing against shock, and 1, 2, 3 shock protection springs. That's triple parachute. That is the company's signature, allowing this watch to both resist damage and keep better time. Really good shock protection will do both. Twin barrels, self-adjusting, patented. Triple parachute, patented. The balance with a white gold rim and an evacuated silicone wheel, patented. The hairspring, 2 elements, cut in half, shaped by hand, clamped back together, breathing concentrically like an overcoil, but flat and shock resistant like a flat hairspring, that's patented. Mirrored plate below the balance, not patented, but darned cool. And then a silicone escape wheel of de Bethune's own design. Screw down crown, 300 feet water resistance, absolutely swimmable. One of the few de Bethune DB28s that is. You can see a black polished cover on the barrel bridge, microlight engraving, mirrored anglage on the edges of both the springs and the bridge itself. The look may be avant-garde, but the finish is very true to Swiss heritage and quite beautiful. We got some weird ones today. This might be the weirdest. Roger Dubuis became a true manufacturer in 2001. It started doing business in 1995 as SOGEM, which was an acronym for the company's full name. But Roger Dubuis, the man on the dial, became the charismatic face of the brand in its early years, and even after he departed, his name, Roger Dubuis, remained on watches that were increasingly made in-house. His business partner, Carlos Diaz, wanted to make every part of the watch, and so in 2001, Dubuis opened a manufacturer with the ability to make, among other parts of the movements, the really tough parts, the balance, the hairspring, the escapement. And then this watch here was part of a series launched that year to celebrate the new manufacturer. Golden square, 40.4 millimeters across, 53.5 millimeters lug to lug, and all white gold with fascinating vertical satin finish on the sides and then polish on other facets. You could see that there is, let's just make sure we're out of the date change zone here. There is a quickset system that's coaxial with the crown that allows you to rapidly cycle the double-digit date. Then we have a power reserve indicator for the 60-hour manual wind power reserve, and then a flying tourbillon with a Celtic cross in black polished and beveled stainless steel. That acts as the seconds hand. It's a 3 hertz movement. It's called the RD03. By the way, it has an RD Easy Diver clasp because that is what the original owner wanted. The clasp, I should mention, is steel. And then on the back, you could see the RD03 would later be known as the RD540. They're the same movement. An enormous barrel for the 60 hours of reserve, and then a center wheel style train poetically draped diagonally across the movement. Note 280-piece limited edition, Geneva hallmark, outstanding beveling, and you can see even within the interior facets of the bridge under the tourbillon, we have black polished screw heads with chamfered slots in circumference. We have internally beveled drive wheels, and then we have engine turning both adjacent to the click and the click spring, and then on the base plate as well, with abrasive wheel stripes across the surfaces. A beautiful way to get into a Geneva hallmark complicated tourbillon built in a limited edition. Now the watch wears like a 44 millimeter Panerai Luminor, so if you're familiar with those and you've worn those, then you know exactly how this is going to fit. Go by the dimensions of the case, which is square. You can see that the case does not protrude over the edge of my wrist. So I could recommend this watch for my wrist size and up. And it is quite comfortable because if you look at the reverse side, you could see that it has a cupped or curved camber, so it drapes over the wrist rather than sitting flat like an old Reverso. So again, Geneva hallmark, flying tourbillon, complications, white gold, and a boutique brand that will always be around because Roger Dubuis is owned by Richemont, and unlike a lot of boutique independents that are hot now, this company will always be around to provide parts and service. Another company that's going to be around for the long haul because we own them is de Bethune. And while I won't necessarily push you to a de Bethune watch over other alternatives, in general, I would encourage you to buy the most expensive watch we have and work from there. But I will say that these are a personal favorite in addition to being a sort of in-house brand for us. I was talking about de Bethune back in 2016. We bought them in 21, so check out my track record. I called them the company that only makes Grail watches, and this DB28 Maxichrono is a Grail watch, fully skeletonized, internally beveled, black polished bridges, a tourbillon with an escapement beating away at 36,000 vibrations per hour. Again, there's the silicon and white gold proprietary balance wheel. You could see that this is a triple column wheel movement with 3 clutches, 3 drivetrains, so that there's no loss of balance amplitude when you actuate the Maxichrono. Here's how the Maxichrono works. 5 hands at center, the Breguet-style hands in black tell you the hours and the minutes. Then you have your chronograph 60 seconds, a radial indicator of 60 chronograph minutes, and then a little stub index that tracks 24 chronograph hours. With Maxichrono, they're all centralized and coaxial. Now this is a 44mm case, rose gold with scratch-resistant blackened zirconium floating lugs. We have 3 clutches, each with a column wheel. We have a lateral clutch for the hours, an oscillating pinion for the minutes, and a vertical clutch for the seconds. The idea is to offer a good blend of seamless actuation and also shock resistance while creating 3 separate drivetrains. So while you do use the power reserve more rapidly when the chronograph is running, the watch doesn't slow down the way a conventional chronograph would. And in spite of all of the features populating this case, assuming the chrono's not running, the watch has a 5-day power reserve. Throw it on the wrist. This is a big watch, I'm not going to lie. It doesn't fit me quite as well as the DB28 GS did because this one has the wide lugs. So you can see that's what the big lugs look like. If you wanted a sense of the small versus big lugs, this episode is probably the only place on YouTube where you can find both for comparison. That said, it's not super thick, so it will slide underneath most cuffs. This is also one of the few solid dial DB28s, so if you like a more conservative solid dial, especially with applied blackened gold Arabic numerals, this is going to be the one for you. If you love any of these watches, reach out to me. I am Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details.